Thank you so much for being with us. I'm so happy to have you here and talk about this new beautiful record.
Thank you.
The first question is for Brian. Has your approach towards songwriting changed for this record and in general throughout the years?
I think particularly with this record, I was a little bit worried about going back to our classic tried and tested ways of songwriting, which kind of involved spending 3 months in a rehearsal room, jamming, a lot of kind of not making decisions and just kind of seeing what happened, and a bit more kind of laissez-faire, but, sort of writing something a bit like a band in a room, This time round, I wanted to mess with the process. I was afraid of I needed something new, a new challenge. I was afraid of not being able to engage with the old process because we'd done it so much before. So the first thing that kind of came to my mind was, why not do everything backwards? Why not take the last creative decisions first and see where that takes us? Why not just invert everything? Just to push me as a writer and hopefully as a band out of our comfort zone, and to try and find a new vitality for us, and a kind of a reason for continuing to do what we do, and that is to feel, I suppose, like you are progressing, like you're improving, like you're evolving. And for me, the process is often more enjoyable than the result. So I needed to put like a kind of an alienation effect inside the process, make it difficult, make it uncomfortable, make it new, so that I wouldn't just kind of fall back on things that I'd done before, and that it would hopefully propel us into new sonic territories, Naturally, as the recording progresses, these kind of limitations that you put upon yourself, as more people get involved, it kind of falls away. But I think this record does remain kind of the most studio creation that we've ever done, because I'd say for about 70% of the time it was just me and Steph,
This record has a great balance between hope and grief, happiness and sorrow, the necessity of being alone, but also stay with other people, at least to me. Very powerful, but at the same time, a little melancholic. Does it make sense to you? Or
I'd say a little melancholic is quite an understatement. I think there's a great sadness in this record, and there's anger as well, but they're much more connected than, these emotions are much more connected than we think on the surface. Often sadness is anger turned inward, towards yourself. So what's important for me is that each song is told from a human perspective, from the emotional perspective. Otherwise, especially if you're writing about things like CCTV, surveillance, the environment, freedom, claustrophobia, it runs the risk of becoming polemical or a diatribe, you know, and nobody really wants to, I don't think wants to listen to music, you know, to be educated, you know, they want to engage and, you know, and have an emotional experience. So for me, no matter how political a song may appear on the surface, it needs to be told from a human perspective. The emotion needs to go into it. And because it's told from the point of view of a character, like almost like a character in a book or something, you know, you have a freedom with reality. You know, you can create different realities in order to communicate that emotion. But as long as there's a human perspective there, as long as it feels like it's coming from a human place.
I always thought that Placebo was not just a band. I mean, not just a music. It's just it's also a band who try to, through music, motivate people, to push them to be free, to allow to express themselves, which is something more than music. Do you agree?
I would describe those as being side effects, you know, because we never set out to do that. That wasn't our modus operandi at the beginning, you know, let's form a band and try and change people's lives. No. Let's form a band and try and change ours, you know. Let's write music that feels vital to us about what we feel absolutely necessary to express. Now, I guess the kind of the repression that we felt as we were kind of growing up, because it was ours, was very, very personal. And then when we met again, we realized that we had that feeling of being an outsider in common, you know. And so there was two of us. But we didn't expect that there were hundreds of thousands of other people who had grown up feeling like outsiders as we had, you know. There wasn't a strategy. It was about being given the opportunity to express yourself truthfully. It was about a necessity, a kind of a do or die. If somebody's going to give you a stage, are you going to be your authentic self? Or are you going to be something else that you think people are looking for? I think it was impossible for us to not be our authentic selves at that point. You know, we needed to express ourselves that way. But we didn't. We set out to change our lives, not other people's. I still find it very humbling to think that that's possible. That, you know, a song that we come up with, you know, the two of us can have such an emotional effect on people. It's an extremely privileged position to be in, I think, you know. But it's something that we discovered after the fact.
Yeah.
You
but
know?
did some way Placebo help you to find a place in the world, apart from the musical side?
Yeah, I think we were trying to find a place where we belonged, you know, and I don't think we couldn't really find it for a long time. But I think with Placebo, we've given ourselves that opportunity to create that place. You know, a place where we can express ourselves, and a place where we can kind of be ourselves. You know, and I think that's kind of what we've held on to over all these years. And to react to it in a very emotional way, if it feels right, then it is Placebo. You know, and I think that's kind of with the way we approach making music as well. A lot of the times, it's like if we respond to it in an emotional way where it feels right, then it's Placebo. So there's all these kind of elements that kind of, you know, makes this little world that's kind of ours, where, you know, where I feel a lot of times where sort of life makes sense.
I also think that there's, on a human level, there is enormous value in finding a purpose, in feeling that you have a purpose, you know, and also in feeling understood. even just by feeling understood by your family or by a small circle of friends. But to create a piece of music or a piece of art, and then to understand that there are thousands of people who out there who also understand is an incredible revelation, you know. And it also feeds into your sense of purpose, because then you feel like, well, I'm achieving something on a human level, you know. And if it's just communicating an emotion, which makes one person feel a little bit less alone because they feel like somebody else understands at a time in their lives where they feel the most misunderstood. And I think there's great value in that, you know. But again, a side effect, you know, it's kind of, shall we start a band to go out there and find all the people who feel misunderstood like us? You know, that wasn't really a strategy. It was just like, should we start a band and make some noise? See if we can come up with anything, you know?
What's more important, the meaning of a song to you or what people think of it? I think of Beautiful James, where everyone can have his own opinion.
Well, hopefully everyone can have their own opinion for every single song on this record. That's why I'm really reluctant to explain what it means to me, because I feel that what it means to me would get in the way of meaning for the listener. You know, if there's enough ambiguity in the song for the person to make an emotional connection to it, then they're able to create their own personal story wrapped around that song. Because once you put it out there, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It's not yours. You know, it's alive in the hearts of others, and it has, you know, significance in the hearts of others. And if, like when you go see a Steven Spielberg movie, you're being told how to feel all the time, you know, especially with the music, you know. I really don't want to do that. Want to leave enough space for each individual to connect to it personally and then to live out their own story, you know. So when people ask who is Beautiful James, it's just like, well, who is it to you? What does it mean to you? And that's becoming much, much more important to me as we continue to make music.
How did that song come out? Is it true that the first title was Bad Piano?
Yeah, because I played it really badly on a piano at 5 a.m. during a kind of a period of, a prolonged period of insomnia, where I was kind of delirious, you know, like when you get a bad fever. Yeah. And sometimes you hallucinate, you know. If you don't sleep for 2 months, you know, those kind of hallucinations or deliriousness kind of starts to happen. And melodies were just kind of dropping into my head, and phrases were just kind of dropping into my head. And normally in the hours when everybody else is asleep. So that kind of happened with Sad White Reggae, and that happened with Beautiful James. It's just, you know, crawling to the piano with your telephone to badly play something, you know, just so it's captured, so I don't forget it. So that in a couple of days I can give it to Stefan and go, could you please sort this out? Could you please do something with this? There's something in here, you know, but come on, you're the musician. I'm the bad piano player, you know. You're the good one. So yes, it was called Bad Piano.
Good. This is a stupid question. 2 songs, This Is What You Wanted and When Missing, remind me some way of Leonard Cohen and Neil Young, even though if there's nothing in common musical styles. Don't you think that there's a sort of emotional geography that goes over the styles and the similarities?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, totally. You know, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned Leonard Cohen and Neil Young, because they're both complete heroes of mine. So that's like an amazing compliment, you know. Yeah. I'll give you an example. You know, I mean, when I was in my 20s, you know, every now and again I would go to a concert, and this concert would be so near perfection that it would make me cry. But I remember the two times, the reason I remember this is because these two bands are so different. I remember going to see Pulp in a theater at their, you know, at the height of their fame, when Different Class came out. And it was such perfect pop music that it made me cry. And then I went to see Shellac, which is Steve Albini's band, you know, which is just brutal, industrial, aggressive noise. But there was something about this band that was so perfect, even though it's such a completely different style, that it also made me cry. You know, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
You know,
Are you excited by the idea of coming on tour again?
I think we're afraid, honestly, more than anything.
Yeah, mucking up the courage.
Why do you say that?
Well, I think because of the enforced sabbatical.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's been something that's never really happened to us before. Up until the point of lockdown, you know, we'd been on a kind of a momentum of like 25 years, you know? So we'd kind of gotten used to doing so many things, like they were kind of second nature, you know? And then when lockdown happened and then we had to take a 2-year kind of enforced sabbatical, we lost our momentum. We fell off the treadmill that we'd been on for 25 years. And then we had all of this time to catastrophize, disaster bait, think and overthink about everything that being in a band meant. And we'd never really kind of had that opportunity before.
No.
And this might be an example of where thinking a little bit too much thinking is not good for your health, you know, kind of thing. So we maybe have had too much time to think about, you know, what being in a band is, because we have a lot of experience from that, and how it affects us emotionally and, you know, just, you know, as human beings. And we probably had a little bit too much time to consider all of these things.
Yeah, I think the sort of the balance had been thrown out of whack. Before, we were trying to slot our personal lives into the Placebo schedule, and all of a sudden, you know, we'd get kind of a personal life back. And now to try to put Placebo back into that is just the first time since the band started, really.
So it's you know, it's an odd time in history and an odd time, I think, for musicians like us who have a tendency to overthink. You know, so perhaps that's where a certain shyness comes, or a certain apprehension, trepidation. You know, a little bit of fear.
What's our biggest fear?
Well, I mean, what we do is very strange. You know, we put ourselves, even though we are shy people, we put ourselves in a place where we're just completely exposed.
Naked,
you know, yeah. So it's an odd psychology. You know, one has to wonder why, you know, why we feel it necessary to seek such validation from so many people in such an odd, contrived context, you know? And we've had too much time to think about that as well. You know, I think that you can think yourself into any kind of fear if you have too much time, too many possibilities, too many, you know? If you just do something and you just keep doing it, then you don't really have time to sort of pause.
Yeah, action is the enemy of thought.
Yeah.
So we have to think less.
We have to
Yeah.
think less. Definitely, yeah.
Italian people love you. You have so many fans, so many fan clubs. What's Italy to you? Do you have a particular feeling towards Italian people?
I have Italian blood, so my grandmother was from Bologna, so maybe that has something to do with it.
What about you?
I don't know. I always, I think I'm drawn to coming from the north of Europe. I think I'm kind of drawn south. Where Italy is.
One last
South
question.
of Sweden, anyway.
Yeah, it sure is.
One last question. In Surrounded by Spies, you use the William Burroughs cut-up techniques. Is it also because in these days we are all just a little piece of a global communication, apart from the fact that David Bowie used it and it's a good technique, but does it have a symbolic
connection?
meaning?
No, it was just, it seemed appropriate for me, to take all of these pages of words and to just kind of like mix them up, I couldn't form a narrative. I knew kind of what I wanted to do, but I couldn't form a classical narrative, a straightforward narrative with the material that I wanted to use. So it just seemed evident for me to kind of, to William Burroughs it, to David Bowie it, to Jackson Pollock it, to John Cage it, to take it, throw it up in the air, see where it lands, and then get a new perspective that way, But there was something about, I think, the mood of the track, which also kind of pushed me in that direction. But, I had pages and pages of lines, and some of them were, but it was never going to make a story, so I had to find another way.
Is there anything that you would like to wish to Italian people?
Live long and prosper.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.